So today we got a special show for you guys, a show where we're going to allow you as fans to discuss and select who you think are the future Proteas that are next in line with regard to a Proteas selection. Now, there are going to be a couple of rules that we're going to try to follow to try and make this a little bit more realistic, because I do know that a lot of people are just going to name all the players that they really like, and it's not necessarily going to be very realistic on who is next in the pipeline and which spots aren't necessarily available with regards to the next players in line. So we're obviously going to have to look at the team, and we're going to have to look where the deficiencies are in the team and where there are spots available for players to actually fill those voids or try and be the next players that are going to be in line in that particular order. So we're going to discuss it today, and we're going to talk about what someone wrote for our latest issue. A buyer wrote an article, an interesting article, based on those rules to try and select who he feels would be the future Proteas in different formats. He went with all format players. He went with and he also went with individual players for specific formats as well. But there are some rules that he followed, and there's reasons for the selections that he made. I will also share that article with you guys so you can see which players he selected in this particular article. But before we get going, before we get started, there's a couple of things I please would like you guys to do. Is that first and foremost, subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you're watching our videos and you've watched more than 4 or 5 videos on this channel, then please press subscribe and please click that notification bell so you can be notified when we upload or we go live with every other video as well. What I also want you guys to please do is also download the latest issue of Cricket Fanatics magazine monthly. Every issue is 100% free, straight to your inbox every month. The link is on the screen now as well as in the description. I also would like you guys to please smash the like button, comment, and share. And please be involved with that, because that's how we go to new audiences. That's how our videos get into new feeds and new audiences. So please help us spread our YouTube channel. We're on the road for 4,000 subscribers. We're only on 90 away from 4,000 subscribers. So please get involved with that and try to push it to as many South African cricket fans as you possibly can. I also would like you guys to please help us grow and promote South African cricket by becoming a patron today. The link is on the screen as well as in the description. And then go to cricketfanaticsmag.com for all your regular updates. So without further ado, let's get straight into today's video. I'm looking forward to discussing this particular topic with you guys. A very good evening and welcome to Cricket Fanatics Magazine. This is your daily show. I'm your host, Khalid Mahideen, and this is the show where we talk about all the major talking points in South African cricket. And today we thought we'll bring you a special show where we're going to talk about and give the fans an opportunity to actually pick who they think is going to be next in line for the Proteas setup. Now, there are a couple of rules that I would like us to follow. First and foremost, I want us to be a little bit realistic with regards to our selections. For example, if there is already an opening partnership that is a little bit that is quite settled at the moment, then it would be strange for us to select 3 opening batters that we think are next in line, because what are the likeliness that all 3 are going to play? Another thing that I would like to say is maybe in the bowling department, where we have the likes of KG Rabada, Anrich Nokia, etc. This is Test cricket now. Anrich Nokia, Kagiso Rabada, we've got Marco Jansen, we've got Cheryl Kutsia, all have played Test cricket already. It would be strange for us to select 4 pace bowlers, quick bowlers, to be selected in the side if there's no space for them to even play. So what I want us to actually try and do is to look for deficiencies in each format and look for which players are next in line with regards to that. And I also want us to have a look at the domestic setup and see which one of those players have performed over a period of time, or maybe that have had a good season that we feel are ready for the step up, whether it be T20 cricket, whether it be ODI cricket, or whether it be Test cricket. Now, we do have a starter where we can start all of this with, and I'm going to get some help on the show today as well for people, for 2 people that are ready, trust their opinions on this. I want them to come and join us on the show and come talk to me about what they think and where they think the deficiencies are in each particular format. So I'm going to first and foremost, I'm going to start off with the article that was posted in Cricket Fanatics magazine, monthly magazine, recently. It was put together and compiled by. We had a massive conversation about who we think should be selected, who we think shouldn't be selected, how we're going to go about with these rules. And he came up with a couple of options. Now, first and foremost, he went with Jordan Herman as on all three formats, across all formats. He went with Matthew Brzezinski in all three formats. Now, you must also remember that Matthew Brzezinski has now also changed his position in Test cricket, for example. He's changed his position to almost like in 4-day cricket to a number 5 slot, a little bit lower down the order, 4 and 5. He selected Deval Brevis as an ODI T20 setup. He, he selected Donovan Ferreira in the T20I setup. He said Mkhlali Mapungwana for Test cricket. He said Jason Smith for Test cricket. He said Nandre Berger for ODI and T20I cricket. He said Ethan Bosch for T20I. Now, I saw some people were triggered by this. The reason is because of when it comes to fast bowling, I know Ethan Bosch has done well in Test cricket as well, but he really stood out this season in T20 cricket. That's really where he really made a name for himself across everybody. And I think there's more of an opportunity possibly for him to make that step up in the T20I game than in the other formats. He said Carl Simmons in Test cricket because we are obviously also in need of a spinner. And remember that this is a disclaimer. Cricket Fanatics magazine encourages freedom of speech and expression of diverse views from fans. The views of this article published on Cricket Fanatics mag are therefore the writer's own and do not necessarily represent the views of Cricket Fanatics magazine. Just to put a little bit of a disclaimer in there. So that's the selection that I made. But the rules are basically, I want you guys to not just name players left, right, and center and just go out and say, okay, we want this player to play and X to play and Y to play. Think about the team, think about the deficiencies in the lineup, think about who could possibly have the biggest chance or the quickest route to getting us selected for the teams. So we're going to talk a little bit about the domestic setup as well, because I'm going to bring on two special guests that will be speaking to me about this as well. So I've got Aditya with me and I've got Tim with me today. Welcome to the show, guys. Good to see both of you. So yeah, I basically gave a little intro, guys, about how we're going to go about this. I want to make it a little bit realistic because I know that people want to obviously see the players that they want to see in the team because they love them or they think they're great players. But it's impossible for us to select 11 players in this particular discussion and say all of them should be in the Proteas setup, because there are some Proteas players, obviously, in each setup that are kind of settled in the teams. And they already have selected some guys that are possibly the next in line. Give you an example, maybe Tristan Stubbs. It's a good example in T20 cricket where he's maybe shadowing someone like David Miller. Probably will swap out with David Miller in certain games or with Andy Klaassen. That's based on my opinion, not necessarily fact. So let me just go around the table over here or around the group over here and get your thoughts, guys. I'm going to start with Tim on this one. And then I'm going to go to Aditya because I want you guys to just give me some of the names that you think are the closest to making their call-ups or their step-ups into the international side. This can either be based on what you've seen in county cricket or maybe what you've seen in the local domestic scene. And who do you think in each format possibly has the best chance of maybe making a step up wherever there's a vacancy with regards to the Test 11? And your reasons, of course. So, Tim, take it away. Let me get your thoughts.
Okay, I'm going to start with the 4-day stuff, this 4-day setup. I think with Elgar coming to the end of his career, shall we say, there's still some question of how long he'll be around. So, for me, Joshua Richards should definitely be thought of as the next guy to take over. He's been around a little bit, but he's really found his place at the moment. I think he's very comfortable where he is, and he's consistent. He's knocking down the runs, and he's got the technique for Test cricket. In my opinion, I think he's got the whole makeup of a solid Test batting opener. And opening in Test cricket, as we know, is very difficult at the moment. But I do think he has what it takes. If I were to go across, It's a difficult one, but I'm gonna go. This is sort of left field. Um, I will say 50 overs, but 50 and T20. It's an option. At Clyde 14 at Borland, the Rocks. Um, Last season he was knocking the door down in terms of the T20. He had a really good T20 season, but he wasn't transferring that across. He wasn't making it count in other competitions. It was just a T20 competition. This season, the penny has dropped. It seems he's realised that he can't just be playing well in one format. He's played well in all the three formats. Um, so that's a really good place for him to be at the moment. But I do think his best is white ball. White ball cricket, hits the ball hard, good striker of the ball, scores quickly. He's a busy cricketer. So that's definitely for me. And then the T20s, as you guys, you've mentioned names already in that article. I would regard with any number of those the T20. There's lots of guys that could put a name for themselves in the T20 format. I'm going to go for Evan Jones. Evan Jones is that guy that we potentially need coming at 6 and hitting from ball 1. He's come to leaps and bounds with his bowling this year, so that'll be a very useful facet to the T20 setup if you can get overs behind him. But my focus with him would be his batting. He finds the boundary with regular on a regular accounts. Big, strong lad, and I think he's only going to get better. I think the more he plays SA20, the more he plays with the overseas guys, I think he's going to get better. This is just the tip of the iceberg for him. We know what his potential is. I think in another year of domestic cricket, and you might find he'll be reaching all sorts of stratospheres and perhaps getting into leagues around the world as well. So those are my three across the formats that I will be looking at for future purchase.
Yeah. So I'm looking at that, and it's brilliant names as well. Aditya, I'm just maybe going to set you up a little bit here, make it a little bit more harder for you. And so when I look at the test arena and I look at some of the spots in the team that I feel are a little bit there are question marks maybe over them. At the moment, I feel that yes, we have I agree with them. Yes, there is a partnership there that is looking good at the moment with Dean Alga and Aidan Markram. But I do think Dean Alga is going to he's moving towards the end of his career. So a next opening batter will probably be somewhere that I think there's a little bit of a weakness. I'm happy with Tony De Zorzi at 3 currently and Pavuma at 4. I think they've shown what they can do, and I think Tony needs a long extended run in the setup. If I'm looking at the number 5 position, I think there are slight question marks over that number 5 position as well. Nobody's really gone in and taken that and made that their own quite yet. We have Ryan Rickleton that has played there. We've got the likes of maybe Keegan Peterson that has played there as well. So there has been some question marks over that number 5 spot. This is where maybe we can maybe look at some of the other incumbents that have done well this season in the number 5 spot. I mean, for me, that's Matthew Brzezinski, but I would like to hear your thoughts on that, Aditya. And then I also think another spot or spot of bother for South Africa is the number 7 spot. Now, Marco Jansen's been playing there and he's been doing really well with bat and ball. I like him there, but there are some people in the fan base or some fans that maybe think that's a little bit of a weak spot. We maybe need a better batter that can bowl in that position rather than a bowler that can bat, even though I think that Marco is getting to that all-rounder status, in my opinion. Another opportunity maybe is also in the spinning department. When Keshaf is missing, it does seem like we have a big problem there other than Simon Harmer with his off spin. Perhaps if Simon Harmer moves on as well in the future, another off spinner maybe in the ranks that could come through, and maybe another backup fast bowler or swing bowler is another option. So I think those are some of the weak spots in the test arena. Then if we move on to the ODI arena, I think that at the moment we found quite a good a solid top 5 in our 6 in our batting departments. But again, that number seven spot, from a batting perspective, is another weak spot, and perhaps we need someone in the ODI format that can be a number six, a next best in line number six, maybe perhaps that can really come in like David Miller and really smack the ball. I'm hoping that Tristan Stubbs takes that as his own, but even there's maybe another opportunity there or another weak spot maybe you see there, Aditya. And then in the T20 arena, me personally, I think we do have two spots that are a little bit worrying for me. I think the opening spot with Riza Hendricks, Quinny de Kock hasn't necessarily been the Quinton de Kock that we know, and especially in tournaments. And that number three spot, I told you already, I want someone that is maybe a little bit more consistent. I mean, I think Riley Rousseau is not consistent enough. The age that he is, from my point of view, but I still want to see him play because he's a destructive batter. And so maybe someone that can come in after Riley when Riley moves on. And I think an off spinner is missing with regards to the T20 format. We don't really necessarily have those off spinners. We've got a lot of left spinners, left arm spinners, and then obviously a wrist spinner. I think that's also missing over there a little bit. And once again, an all rounder, someone that is in that number seven slot. So, Aditya, where do you think the weaknesses are across formats, and who do you think should be a player that should be in next in line? Is it smart to maybe have a player for each particular format or multiple players for each format, or should we pick maybe someone that is an all format player that can maybe be cover for all three formats?
I was thinking that if you look at the South African cricketing schedule for the international players, there isn't a lot of test cricket, and the focus is obviously on white ball cricket, right? And I think to me, a lot of the younger players coming in, they they're likely to suffer from that a little bit, and it might sort of stunt their growth a bit, because we've established on the show, and we look at the evidence out there of the best T20 players in the world right now, and over the last 5, 6, 7 years as well, they're all essentially players who have excelled at Test cricket also. So if I were a selector, I would try to pick players who would serve South Africa in all three formats, and to me, it's the only way to sort of expedite their growth. So as Abaya's article indicated, I think Jordan Herman is certainly one option there. A huge fan of Matthew Braidsky, and I think his game has grown significantly over the last season or two. And I think this is going to be left field, but I do think that the Dawood Bravis should be in and around that test setup, because he doesn't necessarily have to be in a playing 11, but I think at any given stage, if South Africa happens to go in the direction that England is, and that's quite likely because that attempt has been made before, can you imagine what that opening partnership would look like between Dawood Bravis and Nathan Markram? This is totally random, and it's probably never going to happen. But I think it should be said, right? Because how many people really anticipated that Harry Brook would make the sort of impact that he has on Test cricket. I mean, the guy's he's striking at 120 in Test cricket, and like look at the hundreds that he scored in New Zealand, for example. So, to me, I think that's the approach I would take, because South Africa can't control like international scheduling, but for its domestic system to grow, they need as many three format players at the moment right now. That's not a challenge for India or England or Australia, but I think that is a challenge for South Africa.
So Tim, when you look at specific formats, how do you go about it? I mean, with me personally, when it comes to batters in the top order, I tend to look at conversion rates a lot to see how many times a player can convert their 50s into hundreds. Similarly, in ODI cricket, I think in the top order specifically too. And I know strike rate is also a big option in the white ball arena. So when you make your decisions on who you feel should be the next in line, etc., how do you go about? What's your thought process behind it?
For me, the big one is weighted runs. So from a South African point of view, let's say we're talking about Jason Smith. Jason Smith makes 100 against the Lions bowling attack, and then he makes 20 against Northwest. I go, you know what? He scored the 100 against the Lions bowling attack. That's what I'm focusing on. Lions bowling attack, Sapamla, Bukaku, Tuan Olafia, Vian Mulder, Bjorn Fortuyn, no, whoever is playing for Lions on that particular day. That's what I'm focusing on. So I'm focusing on where that individual has scored those runs. Conversion is important. Yeah, I would want that guy to be making big runs when he makes runs. But for me, it's where he makes the runs, who's the opposition, what are the conditions like. That's what's important to me. In terms of, and that is specifically for Test cricket. I think that is because there's a big gap between what our 4-day cricket and Test cricket. There's a huge gap. So if we can shorten that gap as much as possible, then that will make his or her transition much quicker when he gets to that level. In terms of the white ball format, I'm gonna say white ball in general. So I include 50 over and T20 here. It's positive approach. Positive approach. Somebody who doesn't eat up to a lot of deliveries. Somebody who's able, particularly in the batting, who's able to hit all around the ground. Who's not constrained in any way, because gone are the days where you had A.B. de Villiers and you maybe had David Warner. There are so many guys now that are 360 guys. We just talked about Brook there. Brook scores all the way around the ground. He doesn't score in one particular area. So that would be my approach in terms of the 1-day and the T20 format. And that would be my main areas of focus. The other thing, I'm still trying to think what my other point was. The other thing that I would think about is it's not so much the average. The average is not a big thing, but it obviously it does play a part. So average doesn't come into it in T20s at all. If you are averaging 20 and you're striking at 150, you're my team. You don't need to be averaging 40. If you are, fantastic. But if you are striking at 150 plus, then you are 100% in my team. And you saw that in the SA20. You saw there was a lot of take from the SA20 of the guys that were scoring 140 plus and the guys that weren't. Like Devil Brevis. I know everybody loves Devil Brevis, but I would err a caution with Devil Brevis at the moment. Wonderful talent, but I just wouldn't be putting him in any Proteas setup at the moment. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There was something else, but I can't remember. And I'll be here all night thinking about it.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, I think also when I looked at the SA20 stats again, with regards to Deelwald, I think there is a certain narrative that has been painted by a lot of our fans, or some of our fans at least, that he had a terrible T20 or SA20. I looked back at that and I looked at below him, which batters are actually below him, and the batters we were making we were talking massively about were actually quite far below him. I mean, other than the Josh Butlers and these experienced guys above him, I think he's one of the younger guys that have actually been sitting quite high in that run scoring charts. Yes, there's some things that he needs to learn from his game. It's unfortunate that he's not playing in the IPL currently, because I really would have liked to see how he's improved in with regards to that. But I think that the confidence, the mentality, the bravery is something that we need from players in our team. when it comes to Divock Davis, but there's a lot of other players too that we can speak about in multiple formats. A player like
Just
Matthew
to,
Brzezinski from yeah.
I'm just gonna come in quickly. So when I talked about the strike rates, so I like you, I looked at the SA20 numbers and I focused particularly on the
The strike
baddest
rate.
because that's where we need to focus on. I think coming for purchase. Clyde Fortain, 177 runs at a strike rate 145. Now if he's doing that in SA20 against world class players from overseas, I take note of that. I'm not saying I'm going to put him in
That's
the
true.
Proteas team next week, but I'm taking note of that. That to me says he can play.
Mhm. That's a good point, and I like the way you say it and why you're thinking about it here, because it's not just about an average. It's not just about only a strike rate. It's not only just about those things. It's also about, for me, about the approach, who you're playing against, how you maintain, how you deal with pressure, and a good example of that in the test arena, I feel, is someone like Matthew Brzezinski. Now, yes, in T20 cricket, when he played for the Durban Super Jazz. When he played for Durban, what happened with regards to that? What happened with regards to the Durban team? I think you can see already that when he got an opportunity, he really did well. But in the 4 day arena, particularly in that game when he played against the Lions, against that bowling attack that they had with KG and all of them there, he went on to score a massive 100 to help them in that match. And I thought that showed character in difficult conditions as well. It showed character, and it showed other parts of the game, other parts of their abilities that you maybe don't look at when you look at the stats. So with me, when I pick players, okay, yes, maybe I'm fortunate enough and privileged enough to be able to speak to these players, interview them, and Tim has done so too when he interviews them on these podcasts with Umpo as well. So please go follow that, guys. Don't forget to do that. Um, it's some very good insight over there. So when you when we get to speak to them, we Aditya, we get like this other view of them, how they think about the game, where are they mentally, are they mature, how mature are they mentally when they're speaking about the game. Like I knew already with Tony DeZorzi when I interviewed him before this he got selected, that he was already thinking like a test player. You know, the way he was understanding his game. He understood that he needs to go out there and just play the way he wants to play. He doesn't want to change for anybody. He looks also to bat time, which is very important in the longer format. So, what facts do you look at, or what sort of things do you look at, qualities do you look at when you are ready to talk about players that they're in that bracket of being the next in line? You know, I know Melissa Lucy says that the SA team will be announced by the end of this month, so we'll get an idea what South Africa thinks or what the coaches think, particularly Shukri Conrad thinks, because he'll be in charge of those SA teams and the emerging teams. So we'll get an understanding of where they are at with regards to their mentality of who they're picking. So, what attributes do you look at? Maybe you can relate it or correlate it to with regards to the compare that to India and how they select their players as well. Maybe.
So one thing that I've noticed over the last couple of years is that a lot of players, not necessarily from South Africa, but across the world, often say that it's important to score quickly and with intent because there's going to be a ball that's got my name on it. We hear a lot of players saying that, and if you remember, we also brought it up with Ashwell Prince. So that approach I'm wary about because um, because I find that a lot of Test cricket, unfortunately, has been a victim of that thinking, and I understand um, that wickets are challenging and the new rules, with respect to the World Test Championship points, where I think if you win, you get 12 points, if you draw, you get 4 points. So a lot of cricket tends to be result oriented, but I do feel that this approach is not ideal. And again, Prince's interview with us would validate that. Um, but look, I think generally it's adaptability. An individual who's willing to grind it out over a long period of time, wants to bat for days and has that attitude about him. That's that's a huge plus for me. And in India, I think we still, despite the glamour of the IPL and all the other razzmatazz that comes with the cricket in this country, I think there's still a lot of focus on domestic Ranji Trophy as well as Test cricket generally. So I mean, Shubman Gill is definitely dedicated to becoming a full-time Test player for India, and if he says that he wants to bat for 2 days straight, then that works. Um, Oftentimes, like if you saw Virat Kohli score 186 against Australia, he did an interview with Rahul Dravid, where Dravid said that you looked like you're getting comfortable, and you could possibly be a lot more aggressive, but the game situation demanded that you play along the ground and not take any unnecessary risks, because we didn't have a lot of batting after a certain point in that game. And I love that. I thought that's something about Test cricket that India tends to do very well, and and I'd like to see that more in South Africa as well.
What's your thoughts on that, Tom?
Yeah, I think he's right. I think that there does need to be. There's always been a conservative approach in South Africa. I think we are moving away from that slightly. I do like what we've seen this summer with what Rob and Shukri have done. So I do like that. I like the fact that we're moving away from what we have always been. There's a change, if you like. So yes, no, I agree with Abhay. I think that's right. I think that is something to think about going forward. Definitely.
Yeah, so Aditya, another person that I'm looking at in term as well. I think there's a vacancy in that number 7 spot across all formats. A position that I think is needed. Evan Jones is one of those players that obviously Tim mentioned. I do feel that he needs to play more though, and we need to see more of him because he doesn't play enough. I feel now with Delano Potgieter going back to the Lions again, it could make it a little bit more difficult for him to find certain positions if Delano has a great season again. So there's a lot of players at the Lions, and it might have been maybe a smart move to maybe for some of those players to actually move on and to get more game time. But the Lions do have, for example, an opportunity where they have a lot of Proteas. So when the Proteas leave, there's more opportunities. The same at the Titans. But there's a player at Western Province that I'm a big fan of in the number 7 position, and that is Mkhlali Mapungwana. I think that this guy has an amazing amount of talent and an amazing future ahead of him. He's only 22, 23 years old. And I think I like what I see with him with regard to the bat, the positive, exciting, aggressive approach that he has. He plays with an almost carefree nature. It's just that bowling aspect. I think that he maybe needs to bowl a little bit more. He's been riddled with injuries recently. But what's your thoughts on him? I think he should be a player that should be discussed maybe for that SAA and emerging sides.
Yes. If we are now going as has been discussed, that SAA is now effectively becoming South African second 11. It's no longer an area for finding players game time and things. It's actually a second 11. I think that he should definitely be in the mix. There's no doubt about it. My only area of concern for him is I don't want to see a similar situation that we saw with Kishile. Kishile had a fantastic average. First season, average 51, was put into the Proteas setup in a format that wasn't suited to him. And for 2 seasons, we hardly saw him. We hardly saw him for 2 seasons. He found his way again this season, which was really good to see. The back end of the season, he found himself scoring some runs. So my only area of concern would be, ideally, I would like to see another season of him consistently performing across the formats. But there is absolutely no doubt the talent is there. I just want to. I don't want to give guys too soon, and then they disappear for 3 seasons. I want to bring the guys in when they are ready for that next stage. Even when they're ready for the Proteas, say to them, no, I'm going to give you this season for SAA. We're going to play so many games. You perform there, then you'll play for the Proteas. But you're right, the talent is there. I agree. Does need to work a little bit more consistently with his bowling, but he's got the nucleus of being a very good all-rounder. Genuine pace, good bounce, lovely to watch on the eye as a batsman. There's a lot to like about him. Just no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think a
So
lot
if
of
I
people
may
are going to be.
add,
Yeah,
can I
just
add
on
one thing?
1.1 quickly. A lot of people are dissing him in
Yeah.
the comment section, etc. He also didn't play much this season when it comes to test first class cricket. So looking at it, you need to see him in person to actually understand what we're talking about over here, the way he's approached certain games in certain situations. And I know that for a fact that there are a lot of coaches that are also speaking about him. He has made a name for himself, and when we look at the 50 over competition, particularly, he was really good. Um, yeah, Aditya, sorry to interrupt you.
We're talking about the number 7 position, right? And I think generally, whether it's the media or with the fans, we need to we need to measure the success of a number 7 batter differently compared to a top 4 batter. And I think that's where there's been a lot of pressure on players, and this is world over. Adam Gilchrist was an exception in Test cricket, that he scored 17 odd hundreds and averaged 48 in that position. But that cannot be a global standard. He's an exception to that rule, and I'd say the same thing with a number 7 player in T20 and ODI cricket as well. You know that you can't always measure the success of a white ball player at number 7 with the number of 50s or the number of hundreds, because that position, even 30 can be a match winning score, and they're there in that position because they can strike from ball one. And oftentimes, I think that we tend to be impatient with players who are batting that position because that is an incredibly difficult job to do.
Yeah. I agree with you there, as well as the number 6 position. I think
Yeah.
we're too quick to diss the number 6s when they don't come off, when their job is to come in and hit basically from ball one. I mean, we even see the best of the best, like David Miller even struggles sometimes to do that. He needs to get his eye in, go a couple of overs before he can really go and push on and smack the ball. So I hope you're a little bit more patient with the likes of Tristan Stubbs, etc., because I see that we want to chop and change them every single game almost, like when he doesn't perform. I know he's in exceptionally bad form at the moment. He hasn't really been in great form currently, but he had a good list A tournament for in domestic cricket. I'm hoping that in T20 cricket he can really get his form back, but it's very tough for in that particular positions. Like Aditya said, do you think that he's correct there in saying that we're a little bit too quick to want to see players be removed? We don't give them a long enough chance as fans. Maybe do you think? What do you think about that? Tom.
Yeah. I think the problem is, or has been rather, particularly that 6. We don't know what we want, and I include everybody in this. I include previous coaching setups, previous selectors, the fan base. We are not sure whether we want a batting one or a bowling guy at 6. That's been a large portion of the issue. So we've given a guy a go. He doesn't really do either of them well enough. They give another guy and another guy and another guy. It makes a good point. It's a very difficult area to be in, particularly, well, actually, in all of the formats. But what we need to think about there is, I think you need to have different guys there. So your number 6 at Test cricket, I don't think has to play T20
Yes.
cricket. And at the moment, there's a feeling as if he has to. There's a feeling as if he has to play that. Where I don't think that's true at all. If your six is averaging 40 and doesn't bowl, that's perfect for us. From a South African perspective, done. It doesn't matter who he is. It doesn't matter who he is, where he comes from, how he's doing it. If he's able to average 40, fantastic. You move it over to the T20s. If he is striking at 140, keep him. Even if he's averaging 15 or 16 or 17, keep him. If you're making 20 every innings at a strike rate of 140, job done. You're winning the games. You're winning games more than you're losing by a mile. So the problem has been we don't know who we want where. That's been the issue. And that's where Shukri came up with these selections at the back end of our summer. Everybody was going, why all these selections? Because he doesn't know who our 6 and 7 is. He wants to see who is going to be the ideal candidate, particularly when he was focusing on the Test cricket, whether it was going to be Muthasamy, whether it was going to be Monda, whether it was going to be Janssen. And there's a lot of options there. I know who I would like to go with, but the issue has always been, for me, the last 6 or 7 years, it's we don't actually know who we want. And that's been a large portion of why you've seen a revolving door in that particular area, whether it's been 6 and specifically 7. But I agree with you. I think when you've got a team, somebody like Marco Jansen focusing on the Test cricket, let him find his place. He's going to come good. He's going to knock down the doors. He's got everything. He's got everything you could possibly want. There's pretty much every single team in the world would want Marco Jansen, except maybe England at the moment, because they just bat all the way. Everybody else would want Marco Jansen. I guarantee that.
His mentality is the way he thinks about the game is just phenomenal. Pressure doesn't bother him. He's when you can see in pressure situations, wherever his team needs him, whether it's with the ball or with the bat, he comes to the party. And when he does go to the boundary with the ball, for example, he bounces back extremely well. A lot of players then fizzle out, or young players will fizzle out and be affected by that. But I think he likes the fight as well. He has that fight within him as well, which I like. Aditya, let's get your final thoughts, and then your final thoughts as well, Tim. I think we covered quite a lot on the show so far, and I would like to just maybe read some of the comments out before we leave. But let's get your final thoughts, guys.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion, right? We do try to plan for for South African cricket future, but it depends entirely on the direction that the team wants to take. One thing that I will stress is that I think it's important to ensure, even if the focus in the next 5 years or so is South Africa's prowess in white ball cricket, they shouldn't forget the importance of the red ball game. Because if you look at all the evidence today, even with South African players, Faf du Plessis is playing the white ball game the way he is because he understands his game well. And that's a product of the test player that he was. Chris Gale, the universe boss, 10,000 odd T20 runs. He scored 22 odd hundreds. But we tend to forget that he's also played 100 test matches. And somewhere down that line, with David Brevis or Stubbs, and may they continue to succeed in all the tournaments that they play. But if they focus on developing the red ball game, their white ball game will improve. and I think we've got a substantial bit of evidence that will indicate that.
Yeah, you can look at this channel. How many people we've asked that question actually on this channel? Every player we've asked him if it does actually do that. So they've all come back with positive thoughts on that. Tim, your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are going forward, communication is key. Whoever is getting picked, whoever's getting their chance, they need to be given a clear role in what they're doing. If they're given a clear role, if they are if they are given clear direction, we will see the best of them in whatever format they are picked. Back the player, and we will thrive. There's no doubt about it. In terms of the players, there's players available. We've got players in those areas that you mentioned, Khalid. There's no doubt about it. The players are there. It's just about making sure we see the best of them. The only thing that I will add is I think this is a real need for us. You talked about spinners. We need a mystery spinner. We need a mystery spinner or a leg spinner. So if there's any budding leg spinners coming through, we need to treasure them because we've got too many left arm spinners. We've got several options. We got several options to pick from. We need something different. If we can have something different, I think that'll take South African cricket to the next level in terms of their bowling departments. But as I say, we've got we've got the players. They are there. We've just got to be able to back them.
So Aditya, Tim, thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. I'm going to get you on a future show again to discuss these things a little bit more. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I'm going to do some live chat and give some fan service now. But thanks for joining in and joining the show. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cool. So let's get into some of the live chat over here and see what you guys have to say. Shushank says Mitchell van Buren in ODI. Aruna says Deva Brevis. All format player, he says. I would like to see Matthew Brzezinski play more four-day cricket, in my opinion. I mean, sorry, not Matthew Brzezinski. I mean, Deva Brevis play more four-day cricket. I think it will really improve his game, and I think it will really help him take his game to the next level, particularly his 360 game that he's developing. I think it will grow that, me personally. Particularly playing against bowlers that are going to be putting that ball on a spot more regularly. Our bowlers are getting a lot of experience now domestically, getting more control, etc., as they are growing and maturing more. I think our bowling units across the country and all the teams are improving. When we started these divisions, we could see a lot of inconsistencies, but it's becoming more and more consistent, I think, across the different country. I mean, across the country when it comes to that. Akshay says Donovan Ferreira, Evan Jones, Ethan Bosch, Perino O'Brien, Ruan de Swat, Mitchell van Buren, Deva Brevis, Jordan Herman, Michael Pretorius, Carl Simmons, and Bamyan Keke. That's basically a whole 11. So you good names. But it does make that's a lot of players that you've mentioned. You've also mentioned here Carl Simmons and John O'Bird and Neil Brunt. So you basically picked a whole new squad. So I don't know if there was any thinking involved there, or you're just picking the players that you like. Tabo saying Indian players so many test cricket because they have the money, and cricket starting to become a monopoly for elite big three. Lichle saying we need more first class cricket, not 7 games per season. I agree with you on this particular topic. I think they are working on that. Enoch said that he will be working on getting more games with regards to the domestic setup. With regards to the new divisions, I mean, I'm happy with the competitiveness that it's creating amongst teams, although it doesn't really give the player teams at the bottom any opportunity to maybe grow and build. They basically every single game is a pressure situation game for them. So we might see a yo-yo effect with certain teams going up and then coming down, unless they coach properly, unless they transfer strategy is really good when they select their new players. Wacon CSA plan is for SA tours, why they are not exposing youngsters to foreign pitches. We are trying to do so. We are trying to get more SAA tours. It is in the running at the moment. They have discussed it and they are busy planning it at the moment. Um, Tabo says strike rate is overrated. Play the situation. It depends on that depends on the situation too. Particularly when it comes to players that are in that number 6, 7 position, like Tim explained, like Aditya explained. It's very important to have players that can actually um, come in and do their job immediately, especially when you're in a spot of bother, or whether you are in a situation where you need to push the score beyond reach. And I think that that's very important to have that skill. Outside obvious choices, I can see Mitch van Buren playing soon. Yeah, it's a good person that I think you mentioned. Unfortunately, playing at the big union isn't helping him at the moment. You can't expect him. Oh, this is about Evan Jones. You can't expect him to play Proteas if he isn't getting any opportunity to play. He's a very good player with talent, says Melissa. I think we need to broaden our player pool. It's not like we have now most of our Proteas are same old faces. I don't necessarily agree with you on that one. I think our pool is quite big. It's just about giving them the right opportunities at the right time when they are performing and when they are in form, and making sure that they keep that confidence going. And making sure that they're constantly improving their game. Wakas George says Reinhardt in the test team. I would like to see Reinhardt as well, but I do think that we know that there's this thing or the shadow over his head currently about him playing in the coast and scoring runs in the coast. He scored majority of his runs in Bloemfontein in those pitches, even though he scored a very good 100 this season at Newlands against a very good bowling attack. I watched that game live and he was fantastic. And he also has I think a score in Durban as well in difficult conditions. So he is improving that aspect of his game. But when it comes to Northwest, he's moved there to Northwest. He's going to some place that is kind of similar conditions to Bloemfontein. So he's going to play majority of his games on a flat pitch again. So that's about worry over there when it comes to Reinhardt. But I'm hoping that he does up his ability in other pitches other than obviously those flat wickets. Melissa says also she's not a fan of Mapongwana. Don't know why they chose him. Because I've watched him play in person. I've seen his attitude, and I've seen how he's helped Western Province in particular games where they needed to really push forward and push on. And I've really liked what I've seen with him with regards to white ball cricket in ODI and 50 over cricket particularly. Um, Marco Janssen can be the next Pollock, says Pratik. Um, Essay to play as many matches for players to play 100 test matches. Sean van Berg is a good leg spinner and a handy batter as well, but he is too old now for international cricket. Yeah, we need to find someone. I would like to find a nice, young, fresh player coming through the system. I know Junaid Dawood has been in the mix, or his name has been in the mix with regards to maybe certain teams, but he hasn't played consistently for his domestic teams. He's trying to still find a team where he can settle in and play more regularly so he can actually show what he's capable of. Even at SRH, no, it's not SRH, SEC, Sunrisers Eastern Cape. When he was in the squad but never really got a game. So we need to see him play more so that we can actually find out what it's like. Melissa says Bayer Swanepoel with a bit of experience can also be in the setup. Bayer Swanepoel, we are interviewing Bayers tomorrow, guys, on the channel. So please stay tuned to our channel tomorrow. We're going to be interviewing tomorrow at 5:30. So please join the chat and ask him questions in the live chat. We're going to be chatting to him tomorrow. And also, we have another interview planned for the evening at 8. If the coach is available and not still under the weather, we'll be getting the Titans coach on here as well to come discuss the season past and also look ahead at the future. So just remember to press the subscribe button and the notification bell also for future videos and to get notified for that. But it's at 5:30. Don't forget that, guys. I would need you guys in the live chat to ask some questions as well to make it a little bit more fun for both of us. Yanaman averages 15 first-class cricket. Why is he not being considered for tests? Because of this, he moved his position, and since he's moved his position, he hasn't necessarily been in a very good form, to put it lightly. He hasn't really been really playing that well at the Rocks recently. He's really struggled across all formats, and I think that's the reason why. We also need to see Yanaman score massive hundreds. his competition are scoring massive hundreds, 300s, 200s, etc. So he needs to be up there with regards to that. And he also needs to settle down in that number 4 slot for the Rocks for him to be considered once again. So, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to please subscribe to this channel. Click that notification bell for all future videos. I would also like you guys to please download the latest issue of Cricket Fanatics magazine monthly. Every issue is 100% free, straight to your inbox every month. Link is on the screen as well as in the description. Also, you can help us grow and promote South African cricket by becoming a patron today. Link is on the screen as well as in the description. Smash the like button and comment and share to get ourselves to help us reach new communities and new fans across the YouTube space. Also go to cricketfanaticsmag.com for all regular updates. Remember, guys, I've just made the announcement now. We will be interviewing Bayes Manapul tomorrow at 5:30, and then we'll have the Titans coach at 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. So please bring your questions. Please join the show. I would like you guys to ask as many questions as possible, and I'll try to pose as many as I can to the guests on the channel tomorrow on the two daily shows that we will be airing. So thank you a lot for watching, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Sleep well, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Take care.